Wow, funny thing happened on the way to Trump Tower today.
It sound like you were there.
I know, but it's crazy. Kanye West, we have a lot of information about what this is about, but Kanye West strolled into Trump Tower with his entourage, including a film crew that's kind of documenting his life, and went up the elevator and had a chit-chat with Donald Trump for 15 minutes. And we know a lot about what happened and what didn't happen at this meeting, but what will happen at the next.
And something he left in Donald Trump's office.
And something he left
also.
in Donald Trump's office. So let's start with this. Kanye, we know, is the one who requested the meeting. And Trump said yes. They've known each other before. They've gotten along. And Trump said, yeah, you know, Kanye was a famous figure and, you know, he's had his troubles. And Trump said, come on up. They did not talk politics. They did not talk about him playing at the inauguration or a ball. It was talking about, and this was the quote, and this is true, they talked about life. I mean, there was nothing momentous. They talked about life for 15 minutes, and he took the picture and left a parting gift.
Now, just talking about life, does that refer to Kanye's current issues that he's recovering from, that he's dealing with?
The people I've talked to didn't want to get too specific about it, but I believe there was talk about how are you doing, because obviously...
And he's got blonde hair.
And he's got
so
blonde
it's
hair.
very obvious when he
Well, the blonde hair is not the big issue,
right.
But Trump knew that he had been in the hospital.
Right.
So, you know, look, they were cordial, but Kanye left something interesting.
Yeah, he left behind a book, a very sort of racy book, with a lot of images of Kanye's...
Nudes.
Okay, you just want to start with the nudes?
Yeah.
There were some nudes in there, but there's also fashion photos in there, Kanye's designs. I don't know. Is this is a book that's it's out already, right? It's
I
available?
don't know that this is the book.
Somebody was trying to explain it to us, and it was like
I don't know that this is out necessarily.
There are
but
images that are in a book that he has put.
That's correct, and it will not sit on Trump's coffee table. I'm told that.
Due to the nudes.
I will give you some. What I know is part of his whole Yeezy, his design, his clothing. He has artwork done with all of those things. It kind of is one of his projects. He does these art pictures. So they're tasteful nudes is why I chimed in. It's not, when you say nudes, I'm thinking Playboy.
Right.
These are not like, yeah. It's not for you to look at when you have your own time. This is
even though there's Playboy behind him in that picture.
Right,
I know, I thought of the same.
There's Playboy right there.
I thought of the same.
Okay, so anyway, so look, they walk down the elevator and Trump, I got to tell you something, because I know some about what's going on there. Trump is really setting the news agenda every day by going down the elevator when he wants to and going in front of cameras, because it's like fish when you throw food out in the water. They just come over, and they did that with Kanye.
You know what's interesting with the Kanye West meeting with Donald Trump is that had they not talked about life, had they actually talked about something substantive, like, you know, how Kanye can reach an audience that maybe feels alienated by Donald Trump?
We're going to get to that.
We're going to get to that in a second.
Brad has some information on that. But here's what happened at the meeting afterwards.
How long have you been friends?
A long time. What'd you guys discuss?
Will he perform at the inauguration? Hi, you love Congress, right? President elect. President wants the United States. Nothing to say?
Take a picture right now. Mr. President-elect. Yep. Tony, looking good, my man.
So, guys, I'm hearing that this whole thing, for Kanye at least, was a little more than a photo op, and it's part of a bigger plan that he has for Trump. He wanted to meet face-to-face to open discussions and start the discussion with Trump for ending the violence in Chicago. It's something he's been passionate about for years, and he thinks by going there, meeting him in the flesh, establishing this professional relationship, they've always been friendly in the past, but he can then open up talks and try and take action to improve things in Chicago as well.
So the idea,
really
idea
smart
was
on Kanye's part.
Very smart on Kanye's part. And by the way, the idea is that you don't go in guns a-blazing on this thing. You go in, you establish a relationship.
But there's only one question to that. Like, the current president calls Chicago his home and has done numerous things. If Kanye West is so interested in ending the violence in Chicago, why didn't he try to get that accomplished with Barack Obama?
Yeah, look, you're right. Could he have done this 6 months, a year ago, 2 years ago?
The answer is yes. And I'm not saying he doesn't care about it, but I'm saying...
Is better late than never?
Right. I mean, are you going to, like, take a shot at him for doing it?
What I'm saying is, like, that seems weird to
Let's
me.
get it out on the table. You are really bugged by him doing this.
Of course, and I think a lot of people are.
I understand that, and I understand that.
I don't think I'm alone in that at all.
You're
I
not.
think that you know he rushed it, and we haven't really seen what a Trump presidency looks like yet. And I think you look like you're sort of trying to curry favor with the guy now, and it doesn't seem genuine. And Ye's been so erratic and so bizarre lately that a lot of people don't know what to make of this. But if it's something good does come from it, if Donald Trump is willing to listen to people who feel alienated, then it can be good. It definitely could be good, but I just don't have any reason to believe that right now it's anything other than Ye acting crazy.
Well, unless, look, there are a lot of people jockeying for position and wanting Donald Trump's ear. A lot of people. And, that's just the case with any president, but especially here, where he did not have a lot of these people supporting him, in the Hollywood community, in the music community, that very few were supporting him. And now all of a sudden it's a wide open field, and he's coming in and he's trying to fill the gap. I mean, in a way, strategically, it's kind of a smart move.
Oh, no, it definitely makes sense for Donald Trump to do this. It definitely, it's good for him. And in a way, he's the president of the United States, so it's good for Kanye West. The question is, will it be bad for the people that have supported Kanye West over the years? How are we going to be viewed in the next administration? And we, to be honest with you, still don't know and aren't sure about that. So it's weird that Kanye would jump to that train now before we have any clue what America's going to look like 6 months or a year from now.
Hi, guys. I'm Farron from Brooklyn, New York. And I think that Kanye just wants to be one of the first artists on Trump's good side. I think that it's a smart move. I think that he wants to be involved in the inauguration. Maybe he wants to sing.
No, he doesn't. We know that I can tell you for sure that this is not about him singing at the inauguration or at any of the balls.
We should point out that had he done that, because when he first walked in, certainly that was something we thought about.
Right.
But had he done that, it really would have created an issue with his insurance policy.
Huge
We've been
issue.
telling you that his insurance policy will kick in. There'll be a claim that has already been made.
This is what by canceling the concerts, he's going to get the profits he would have made and all of the obligations in terms of paying people. The insurance policy is going to pay it.
Right, but had he gone and performed at the inauguration, the insurance company.
Oh, if I'm Lloyd to London.
We all know how insurance companies work.
Oh, if I'm Lloyd to London.
And they are looking for a reason to not pay, and that would be it.
Excuse me, Mr. West, but if it's good enough to perform there, you can do it at Staples.